So yesterday we finished with Vehu Inyan Lamed Bet Chutei Tzitzit. The same thing that the 32 pathways of wisdom do for the world, for bringing the infinite light down into reality through the Torah, so the tzitzis does on a personal basis for people. Okay? So basically, a tzitzis, when you put tzitzis on, you have a microcosm of the entire world functioning on you. Okay? So in the entire world, when Hashem gave the Torah, so he made a tremendous dilug, tremendous quantum leap from one state to another. It's completely discontinuous. It's not evolutionary. And by doing that, he revealed the end right now. What's the end? The end is the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem in all of reality. But it comes through the Torah. So that's what the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai was. So that instead of going through 50,000 jubilees of evolution until we reach this understanding that Hashem is everything, the Torah gives it to us directly. What's the difference between Avram and the Torah? That by Avram was just a blanket statement. Avram was a general statement. Hashem is everything. But that didn't help the individual, or even a people, or even a group, or whatever it is, know how to conduct themselves with that, according to that knowledge. And the Torah changes that by telling you, look, if you want to conduct yourself based on this observation that Hashem is everything, you put tefillin on, you keep Shabbos, you do this, there's a whole slew of things, and with your mind, you engage in this type of learning. And this type of learning is what brings the infinite light of Hashem into reality even now. Or, again, reveals it even now. Now, that's the general. Now, the analogy is that what happened with Korach is on the individual level. And it's about something smaller. And what's it about? It's about the relationship between the surrounding light and the integrated light, the inner light, on the personal level. So we need to see how that works here. We're on 5. Yeah, but again, this is all. Okay. Let's skip to page 5. We discussed all this. He's looking at it from various angles. V'zeu inyan hatzitzit, the third paragraph. We said that the description of the crown having hairs is already in Daniel. That's what Daniel says. Latik yomin, levushei tlag chiver, use'ar rishei ke'amar nekei. He says the higher part of the crown, here's the higher part, in Kabbalah it's understood differently. It doesn't really matter. The crown has hairs coming down. So usually when we talk about the hairs, we're talking about the hairs of the beard. But it also has hairs from the skull. And the idea is that hairs are what allow this leap. Again, in the same way that the 32 pathways of wisdom in the Torah are what allow the leap in revealing the infinite light. So, in the crown in general, there are hairs, 2 sets of hairs, the hairs of the head and the hairs of the beard, and each one of them represents a skip. Except, he says, Vuam shachata chasadim. But the point is here that the skip is that you add loving kindness into the mix. Now we're talking about the individual. So the idea is that an individual also wants to develop in an evolutionary way, wants to develop slowly, stage by stage. But if he would develop that way, then we talked about yesterday how the Baal Shem Tov said he would understand divinity, how he would understand God. So in the beginning he'd understand that God is just everything he sees. And only at the very, very end would we tell him that God is much more than everything you've ever seen? Okay? That's understood, right? That's theologically. But now we're talking psychologically. Psychologically, a person who is going through the normal stages of development, evolutionary step-by-step development, they encounter problems, they try to deal with them, and they come out scathed, and then they rethink how to deal with this problem in a better way. What will they eventually come to? What it will be their greatest realization at the end of their life, that I could have handled everything using loving kindness instead of using might. Okay? Now it can't be completely skewed in the direction of loving kindness, but you have to add loving kindness into the mix. If I would have added it enough into the way I dealt with problems, now I'm already saying an application, if I would have added enough loving kindness into the way I dealt with the problems, I would have dealt with them much better. That's the great realization that the person comes to, is supposed to come to at the end of his life. Okay? Now we don't want that to be just at the end of the life. So the Tzitzis brings it in, or at least this description that Daniel gives, it says you can bring it in every day of your life, okay? Even on Shabbos. Okay? And what's the idea? So the idea is, he says, he says, because, sorry, I skipped didn't make any sense to me when I read that. So these hairs that are coming from the skull, they're, even the locks they're white. So it says, what does it mean that they're white? That they're coming from atik yomin, they're coming from the higher part of the crown, and atik yomin is like leit smola ba'ayatika kula yamina. It's all loving kindness. Okay? And the normal way you get to be a grandfather is you have to be 80 years old.
You have to be
80 years old, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, you're not even a grandfather yet. Look, you still have gingy in your hair.
I'm not a grandfather.
You're not completely white yet. Okay? When you think of a grandfather, he's got all white hair. Okay? If he has any black or red or whatever, he's not yet. He's still got gvura in him. He's still got might. So how do you get there? No, well, you have to be 80, 90. I don't know. By the time everything's gone.
That's a great grandfather.
He's great. Why? Because he's so good at being loving and kind. But here he's telling you can become this when you're 13. You can become this even when you're 5 years old, when you're 3 years old. The moment you put the tzitzis on, that's what the tzitzis allows you to do. Now, the fact that most people don't know what to do with the tzitzis, that's a different problem. They're not aware of this. Most people don't know this.
They know what to do, then they wear them.
But they don't know. They say you look at it, you're reminded of all of Hashem's commandments. Seder. What does that mean? What? It's a memory stick. It's like a mnemonic. What is it? It says no. The moment if you connect, which means that you won't act in the way that your normal constitution tells you to, which is to develop through might, to develop only through gvura. You'll develop through something much higher. You can skip the stages. You can understand that Hashem wants something else. You're reminded that Hashem wants something else in the world. That's the greatness of the tzitzis. And it's a little missing. And it's not exactly what people think of. They don't say this is something that makes you grow up very quickly. They don't associate it, the reason that it's white, like this, they don't associate it with an old man's hairs. It's not that people see it.
Well, where's the blue
Wait, so we're getting to it. So those are the white hairs. The hair of his head is like clean wool. And wool is white when it's clean. And that's the loving kindness. So the white in the tzitzis, that's the loving kindness. Now he says, it feels like something is missing here. but really what he means to say is you need the white, ki yesh gam ken se'arot deza, because apart from the hairs in the crown, there's also a beard in za, in the small countenance, in tiferet, not in the crown, what's very conscious. And in what's very conscious, the hairs are completely black. All of Za's hairs are black. What does it mean that they're black or red? They're one or the other two, black or red. And that, שערות האלו דציצית הם חסדים, והיינו לפי שמקורם, שהם דינים. And that is might. And that's the constitution of a young man. Okay? The constitution of a young man is to solve everything through strength, through might. אבל שערות אלו דציצית הם חסדים, והיינו לפי שמקורם משך, ושערות דאריך אנפין. But the tzitzis is, on purpose it's white, it's not black. In fact, even if you have a black garment, you have to put on white tzitzis. Why? Because theoretically, you could put on a tzitzis that's made out of the exact same material as the garment, and then it could be the same color as the garment. So if you had a blue linen, take blue out, a black linen, I don't know how you'd make it, a black linen shirt, and it had 4 corners, you could put on tzitzis made out of black linen. Theoretically, you could do that, but nobody does that. Why? Because in the end, the sages say that the best option is always the white wool. And there's a reason for it. They give a halachic reason. But really what they're saying is...
I never heard of any tzitzis in any color except
Sandals, you haven't been around enough. There's crazy people that actually do that.
yeah.
And it's kosher as far as I know. And now he explains it better. כי יש גם כן שערות דזה, וזהו עניין הכנף מן כנף. It says, how does it say? How do you kiss the tzitzis when you say Kriyas Shema? Where do you kiss? So I haven't seen anybody. I may be wrong, but according to Diktuk, the way the people kiss is wrong. Because they kiss on every time they say tzitzis.
Right.
And here they have a nice little round donut to tell you you're supposed to kiss it, like you kiss a donut. So they say, "V'asu lahem tzitzit," and they kiss it. Al kafei videm v'otam v'tnu al tzitzit, they kiss it. And then they say, "Hakanaf ptil tchelet." That's not correct. Grammatically, that's not correct. When it says to kiss, you kiss before you say the word or after you say it. Okay? It's not clear which one. You can't kiss it while you're saying it. It doesn't work. But here, and this is an awful siddur. I didn't realize how awful this siddur was. In this siddur, you can't see smichut. You can't see words that are joined because they're like court-martial. That's the only example I have right now. Why are these 2 words joined? Because one, they go together. When you say tzitzit hakanaf, okay, you can't say tzitzit, stop, and just say hakanaf ptil techelet. What they did here was they retained this line. You see this? Mm-hmm. This is a terrible siddur. Mamish, I would never daven out of this.
What siddur?
This is the new Chabad siddur. Why is it terrible? Because in a siddur, it has to look.
You get rishus from the Rebbe to make this siddur.
That's probably the reason why it's so terrible. In a siddur, it has to look like the way it looks here. If I look at the regular, here it is. See how it is here, and you'll see. When you say tzitzit kanaf, there's no. But in Diktuk there is. They have a psik here. Al tzitzit. You can't separate here before. Okay. Al tzitzit hakanaf. This is according to the Tamim. Okay. So it could be that I'm wrong, but tzitzit kanaf I think is smichut also. And so you really should kiss either before al tzitzit hakanaf or after hakanaf. That's at least how I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong with this. What's the idea? That they're connected, these two words, tzitzit hakanaf. So what are you saying? Anyway, in the Gemara, what did the sages learn from this? That's what he's saying now. They learned that the kanaf should be min kanaf. Tzitzit hakanaf. The tzitzit should be from the same material as the kanaf, as the corner. That's what they learned from it. Okay? So here they left out the connecting dashes. So you can't know the two words are connected. You're not allowed to stop in between.
Why did they put them in?
You have to put them in.
Why did they not put them in?
I don't know. Why? Who would come up with such a strange idea to take it out? I don't know how you can take it out. I know that.
See, they didn't put you on the editorial board.
I don't know how they put it in. Don't know. Very strange. I don't know how you can take it out. I don't know. I have to see where they came up with this. In any case, so from this you learn that the tzitzis needs to be made out of the same material as the kanaf, as the corner. Tzitzit kanaf. So from this you understand what the tzitzis is serving, because it has to be from the same material as the garment. Because the tallis, what is the beged itself? The garment itself, especially when it's a special garment, then it's called the tallis. Okay? Because you have any garment can have tzitzis on it, but this one is specially made, okay, to be something that you wrap yourself in with the tzitzis. So then it's called tallis. So it comes from the sovev. It's a surrounding light. That's why you say the blessing, right? To surround myself with the tzitzis when I put it on. So it's from the sovev, it's from the surrounding light. והציצית שהן למד בית נטירות החוכמה, אף על פי מה שנמשך לעיר בחינת אור פנימי, בחינת מלא כל מין, שאין זה אלא זיו והערה, אף על פי כן הוא מין כנף ממש. But from the words that the tzitzis is made out of the corner of the garment, what we learn is that even though the tzitzis itself is like a line, we said the line is the integrating light, it's the light that fills the worlds. Nonetheless, the stress here is that it's coming out of the surrounding light. And that's why we had to have the whole chapter in the beginning talking about surrounding light and beginning light, and explain how as the light comes down, it puts out a circle. It puts out a surrounding light. Okay? But its source is still in the surrounding light. So even though these are strings, and you would think that they're like integrated light, it says no, they really are from the surrounding light. So what are they bringing down? They're bringing down it's a dilug. So what they're doing is they're shorting. They're bringing down the higher state into the lower state suddenly, without evolutionary, without ishtalshelus. It's skipping. So you follow. It's very, very simple. שהרי המשכה זו היא גם כן בבחינת דילוג, שלא כסדר השתלשלות העולמות הנמשכים מבחינת ממלא כל המין. So the tzitzis themselves, they're a skip. Like we said, he's just explaining now more.
I don't really follow that. I'm a bit confused.
You can think of the surrounding light as where you'll end up in the end. It's the consciousness you'll come to in the future. It could be that future is 5 minutes away. It could be that future is 100 years away. It could be that future is 50,000 jubilees away.
So if it doesn't affect me personally.
Right now, it's not affecting you because it's not conscious. So that's why we say it's in the future.
Mamala is directed to
The
me.
mamala is what's already in my consciousness. Okay. So if I'm now learning a sefer, so I'm learning the sefer. So everything that we've covered until now is theoretically in my mamala. I've already integrated it. I understand it. What's in the next line is soviv, as far as I'm concerned, because I haven't seen it yet. I don't know what it says. I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. I don't know what it is. It could be that I'll read this next line in the next minute. It could be that I'll read it in a year. And it could be that I'll never read it in this lifetime. I'll only read it in 50,000 years. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, that's minimal. Now, how do I get to the next line? I have to read. I have to sequentially read everything. So the only way you can get to page 5 where we're on is if you start reading on page 1. Good. Now that would be true if we didn't have a book. When you have a book, you can do a trick. You can say, I'm not going to start reading here on page 1. Whoops. I'm going to start on page 2 or 3. How'd I do that? That's a skip. I just skipped ahead. Do I understand what it says here?
No.
No idea. But I skipped.
So what's the value of that skipping?
Tremendous. Because it's the reason why a lot of people, when they read a book, they skip to the end first. They first want to know, is it a good ending? If it's a good ending, let's see how it happened. Now I'm interested. But if you tell me it's a crappy ending, it's not interesting, it's also a letdown, then I'm not interested in reading the whole book. What for? Waste my time.
You can't know if the ending is valuable till you read the whole book. You didn't read the ending.
So there's truth in that you can't really appreciate the ending until you've been through everything. But in general, is it a happy ending? Is it a not happy ending? Is it something that's going to make me feel better? Something that's going to make me feel worse? That you pretty much can understand from the last page. Okay.
Well, the whole universe is not going to have a happy ending when you share first. It's going to some people be running around.
No, absolutely not. It's not true. Not true. Not true. Everybody will have a happy ending. Each one according to how much of the text they actually read. It's happy, but maybe you won't understand why it's happy. In any case, that's the type of skip that Torah did. The moment that Hashem gave the Torah as a book, He allowed us to skip. Not because we skipped to the middle of the Torah. That's not the point. The point is that the whole idea that the Torah is given as a book is a game changer. Because you're getting the end. Basically, this book is the last page. And it's telling you what you would come to after 50,000 Jubilees, to what understanding you'd come to, and how you'd run your life. And I'm giving it to you now in the year 2448. You don't have to wait 50,000 years. Or 50,000 times 50. You don't have to wait that long. Here it is. That's understood. As far as the Torah, that's understood, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when you talk about a person's development, you have the same thing. If I had my life in front of me when I was 20, and I could look at the end of my life, I'd come to one conclusion, he says, that you can't run your life only based on might. You can't do it. It doesn't work. You need might, otherwise there's no progress at all. But the thing that really makes the progress happen is not how strong you are, how powerful you are, how obstinate you are, how much you'll fight everybody, but rather how much loving kindness you'll have added to your might. Okay? And in fact, most of it should be loving kindness, and the might should take a backseat. So if I could see what my final revelation as a human being is going to be, okay, what would I see? That's what I would see. Each one according to what might means for him and what loving kindness means for him. There's one guy for whom might means, whenever my wife tells me something I don't agree with, I have to put my foot down and make sure that I don't do what she says.
That's not might, that's the opposite.
No, why? That's might.
Might is being able to
No. Okay, I should even force her. That's what I'm saying. I force her to do what I want, not what she wants.
That's bullying.
Doesn't matter. That's his idea of might. So, what's his whole story? What's the whole story of his life about? Understanding that the fact that you have this tendency is not entirely bad because you need it for something. But what you came here to learn is how much loving kindness you should add to that.
Infinite.
Maybe it's infinite, but you have to add it. It's not there naturally. You have to bring it from somewhere. Okay? So if I could see the end of my life, he says, my final glimpse into this world and what did I learn from life, every person in some way has that as his lesson. If you're entirely loving kindness, you don't live in the world. You can't live in the world. You can't. There has to be some amount of might. There has to be some standing on your principles. There has to be something that you stick to. Okay? Otherwise, there's to be no progress at all. On the other hand, you have to add to it loving kindness. The question is, how much loving kindness do you need to add to it? So in the tzitzis, the blue string is the might, and the white strings are the loving kindness. So it's a 7-to-1 ratio, which is a good idea. 7-to-1. So for every part of standing on your principles you have, you need 7 parts of loving kindness towards everybody. Doesn't mean you don't stand on your principle, you do. But everything, what do people feel? Do they feel he's standing on his principle? Is he steadfast? Or is he just a nice guy? So 7 out of 8 people would say he's just a nice guy. And 1 person would say he's standing on his principle. That's how strong your nice guy mentality has to be. You have to make everybody feel loved. That you love them and you care for them and so on, and then you have your principles. I'm not moving anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Okay? So is this you follow now? Is this better?
It's a hard concept.
Wait, which part is hard? To understand why in the future, before I pass away, I understand things about life that I didn't understand until now.
That's obvious.
That's obvious. So if I could have that now, that's what he says. That's what the tzitzis gives you. It gives you that end of life consciousness now. Again, end of life is a bad. End of life is terrible because I don't want to talk about end of life. What it gives you is what you'll gain in 50,000 years. Not when all your incarnations are over. It can give you now. You don't have to feel like it's dying now. Not at all.
So if you're 3 years old and pulling sisters, then what happens with the rest of your life? You already got to that stage.
Now you're going to run your life much better because when you look back at it and you have this revelation that I should have been more loving and more kind, so it's too late. But if you realize that at age 3, 5, 10, 20, whatever, and you begin to run your life that way from that moment and on, it's much more successful and better life. Mm-hmm. So that's what it does. But again, the idea that Korach has is he attacks the notion that there needs to be tallis, there needs to be the might at all. And he says, no, it should all be white. He says you don't need the tallis. What's his idea? His idea is like this. He says that if the garment is entirely blue, the tallis, it's so if you're saying then normally I need to have 1 part out of 7 tallis in any tzitzis. If the garment is not tallis, let's say it's a regular linen, woolen garment, whatever it is, okay. Cotton garment, whatever we wear now, and you need 1 string that's blue in order to make it work. So if the entire garment is blue, why would you need an extra string? The entire garment is blue. So the rest of the tzitzis can be white. You don't need a blue thread at all. That's his thinking. In fact, it could be that he's even going so far as to say you don't need any threads But that's a little pushing it. But the normal way he understands is that if the entire garment is blue already, so you don't need a blue thread in the threads. You don't need it because you have so much blue already. You have so much might already. Understand? You already have it in the garment. So why would you need it also in the threads? What is he saying? He's saying we, the Levites, we're all might. We come from the left side. The Levim are Gvura and the Kohanim are Chesed. So he says we're like the blue garment. We're entirely white, blue. Okay? Because we're entirely blue, we don't need the blue in the tzitzis. In other words, we don't need halacha. We don't need the backbone. The blue here is like the backbone. That you do stand on some principle. Okay? That's what he wanted to say. Why would you tell us what to do and what not to do? Hashem is within us anyway. We don't need your backbone to... That's exactly what's going on today. We don't need your backbone, Mr. Haredi or Mr. Frum. We don't need your Torah to tell us that we're Jews. That's exactly what they're saying today.
But they've been saying that for a very long time.
The Korach, that's democracy. That's Korach's. That has always been Korach's argument. We're all Jewish. You don't need to teach me how to be a Jew. Okay? That's what he's saying. So where are you connected to Hashem? What do you mean? I'm all connected to Hashem. My entire being is connected to Hashem. I don't have to put tefillin on to prove it. I don't have to keep Shabbos to prove it. I don't have to eat kosher to prove it. I don't have to prove it at all. I can be all white. Do whatever I want.
But being connected to Hashem means doing what he wants you to do.
No. That's only in that's telling us through the Torah. The Torah is 32 pathways of wisdom. How to bring the infinite light here. I'm telling you I'm connected to the infinite light above. I don't need it here. I'm already connected. I don't have to show it in this world. There's no strings attached.
In the higher world.
What?
How can you be connected in the higher world?
Because that's where neshama is from. That's where the source is from. That's the garment. The garment is how I'm connected, and that's the soul itself. The strings are how the soul comes to be expressed in this world. Because I don't need that. I'm already a holy soul.
I'm a good guy.
Yeah, and the most important thing is to be a nice guy. It's not 7 parts out of 8. It's 8 parts out of 8. That's the only thing that's important. So being politically correct, that's the most important thing. That's how you translate this to today's scenario. Okay? You follow what he's saying?
Basically, not 1,000%.
What we're saying is that eventually you'll come to understand that you can't be a human in the world without a backbone. It doesn't work.
From what I understand what you're saying, and maybe you're not saying it, is that anybody who wears tzitzis is guaranteed never to do an avera.
Where did we even talk about averas? We didn't mention that word even once.
Connected to Hashem.
What's that got to do with Hashem? To bring the infinite light down into this world, you need tzitzis. Korach is not saying you don't need...
brought down the infinite light, so then how can you then go and do something which is against what Hashem wants?
Because you have free will and you sometimes ignore it and you don't look at your tzitzis. Tzitzis is not a magic trick. You have to have it consciously. You have to think about it. You have to look at it to understand what it means. If you don't look at it, it's not some mind-bending trick. It doesn't take away your free will. Okay? It's very important. The Torah is not a magic not a magic act. Shame. The pills that can do that for you. Psychiatrists have magic acts. Normal people, yeah,
they're all crazy.
Because they've been drinking the lemonade too long, or the Kool-Aid, or whatever they've been drinking. But there's no tricks. The question is, what happens when you do become conscious of your tzitzis? says if you become conscious of it, you realize that what it's saying is that the infinite light can be here, and it's here through the mitzvos, by doing mitzvos. That's how you bring it down. And comes Korach and says, the only mitzvah is to be white. That's all you need. Just be a nice guy. That's all you need. There's no need for that blue thread.
But it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because, again, his logic is faulty.
And now we don't have a blue thread anymore.
Oh, that brings into a question that he doesn't deal with here, but you have to understand what he means. He says that the blue thread, this is the crux of it all. And this he doesn't discuss here. The Rebbe Rashab discussed this. And I haven't heard anybody explain the Rebbe Rashab this way except for Rabbi Yitzchak, but I think it's the best explanation I've ever heard of what the blue thread is. The Rebbe Rashab was very against putting the blue thread in now. He didn't want in our generation to, even if it's the correct identification. There's a whole problem halachically about whether you can count on this identification. And what most people say in the end is that you didn't lose anything because you still have a woolen thread. It's still made out of wool. The fact that you dyed it in blue doesn't matter anything halachically. You still have a kosher tzitzis. So you're not performing, what they say is the worst case scenario is you're not performing the blue thread. The worst case. But you still have a kosher tzitzis. The best case scenario is that this is the blue thread. And so you've not only put tzitzis on, you've also had the added value of having a blue thread, which again, not having a blue thread doesn't take away from the holiness of the tzitzis. It's still kosher. Okay. The Rebbe Rashab, when it started with the Razin, with the Radzin, sorry, the blue thread that they found was some kind of eel or octopus or whatever it was. A junon. It's an ink. It's an octopus with ink. It's not called an octopus. It's a different word. I don't remember what it's called. So he was very much against it. Why was he against it? Because understand what the blue thread does. That's what Korach attacked. He didn't want there to be a blue thread. That's what we just said. He wanted it to all be white. He said, we're already blue enough in our source. As a Levi, that's what he says. I'm already blue enough in my source. I don't need the blue down here. So what does the blue represent? The blue is the color of kingdom. That's what we say. You said this, I think, one of the first times we talked about this. Why did kings wear this? Because it was a sign of being sovereign. Only the very, very rich kings could afford this blue thread. Even today, it's very expensive. I don't think it's the right one because it fades too fast. But maybe even if the identification is right, but they don't have the process of making it right. And that's why it fades so fast. But it's very expensive, even today. I mean, it's really expensive. The purple and the blue is the same thing here. But I can't get into this whole discussion. There's books and books written about what this blue really the color is. But it's closer to purple or something like that than it is to blue. In any case, it's exactly the problem that we have now. What the king is meant to do is give true unity, achdus, in the real sense. Achdus in the fake sense is exactly what Korach is saying. He's saying you can be Mr. Nice Guy. That means being friends with everybody. But that doesn't give a backbone. In other words, every person is to himself, really, and we're just careful not to walk on each other's feet. But we can't do anything together because we have nothing unifying us, really. You can't say that just being nice gives direction. That being nice gives a purpose. Just being nice makes us into a unified people. That doesn't work. Unification means we have a common purpose. And by the way, this goes together with doing away with purpose. The nice guy attitude, Korach's attitude, means doing away with purpose. Because when there's no purpose, you can be nice to everybody. But when you have a purpose, you have something you want to achieve, you can't always be nice to everybody. Not because I don't want to be nice, but because somebody who's hindering my purpose. He's against what I'm doing. And there are struggles in the world. You can do it nicely, you can do it in a civil manner, but you still have to struggle to decide which idea is going to turn out to be the better one, which type of behavior is the better one, which type of lifestyle is the better one, and so on and so forth. You can't just say everything. When there's no purpose, for instance, there's no purpose to give birth to another generation. So I don't have to have kids. And I have to be very respectful and nice to everybody who decides that they don't want to have kids, even though they're undermining the human species. So now they have a better claim because they say there's overpopulation in the world. Okay, maybe. Okay, so for a while don't have kids. I don't know. The ones who say this, fine, don't have kids. But when a Jew tells me that there's overpopulation in the world, they shouldn't have children. So I said, that's nonsense. If the Goyim don't want to have kids, let them not have kids for a while. It's still not good, but for a while, I'm sure the earth will sustain it. Life in the world will sustain it. For the long term, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. The problem in the world is not overpopulation. The problem in the world is distribution of wealth. It's a completely different problem. And because of the distribution of wealth is so skewed, so you've got these people who will take advantage of everything and destroy nature or the world or whatever, because everything is here to serve them. And that's where the problem lies. Not because there's too many people. There's really not too many people. The earth can sustain probably 60, 70 billion people without a problem. In any case, if unity is not based on this blue thread, then it's not unity. It's just getting along. You're not going anywhere. You're just passing time. There's no purpose. The moment you have purpose, you have sovereignty. You need to have sovereignty. You need to have a king. You need to have somebody stating that purpose, giving you that purpose. That's the real difference between the left and the right. It's very interesting that the left, why do we still call it the left, even though it was in France and who cares and whatever? Because it's exactly Korach. It fits incredibly well in the end. Because the loving kindness, they say, is because at our source, we're all might anyway. Each one is an island to himself. We're cut off from everybody else. We're not interested in cooperating, really, for a common purpose. The only thing we're interested in doing together is being unassuming to one another. We're not going to tell each other what to do. Okay? We're going to be so anarchistic in our purpose that every person is going to do whatever they want. There's no common goal for mankind. There's no common goal for a community. There's no common goal for a nation. There's no common goals. The only common goal is you have to not ever say something nasty to anybody. That's our common goal. It's not a goal. It's just saying that those are the rules of expressing. Okay. So you follow what's happening here?
Yeah.
So the Rebbe Rashab said, if you can't have a king, if you can't have somebody stating what the purpose of the Jewish people is, don't put the blue thread in, because if you put the blue thread in, Chaz v'Shalom, what will happen is that somebody like, I have to say it, somebody like this fool who now came along will come and tell you the purpose is to make everybody happy. That's not the purpose. Sorry, that's not the purpose. That may be a result, that may be a fringe benefit of doing what's right.
That's why it's a fringe benefit.
Okay. Did you follow the idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Time to go home for Shabbos.
Yeah, Mark says it's a sea urchin. I think he's right.
Mark says?
It's a sea urchin. I think he's right. It's not an urchin.
Mollusk.
It's dunon. I don't know. It spreads ink. I don't know what the
Tiny
name is.
little mollusk.
It's very small. Yeah. No, that's the new one. That's the new one. So the one the Radzin found was it has no.
Well, they did what it was.
Very interesting. It has no backbone. It's very interesting that the one that they have now is all backbone, but it's not a backbone. It's its shell. Okay? So it's very interesting that there is this idea of shell in it. Okay, that needs to be discussed separately.